Have you always dreamed about writing a book but weren't sure how to do it? Hi, my name is Joel Marcaris. I'm the president of Ghostwriters & Co. And in this video, I'm going to show you the step-by-step process you need in order to write a book. Don't forget to like and subscribe this channel. I've got plenty more videos coming down the pipeline on how to publish on Amazon, the differences between self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and traditional publishing. Now, you've always wanted to write a book, and I'm going to show you how to do it. First, let's talk about the tools you need in order to start that book. You need, obviously, the usual stuff like a word processor, a laptop maybe. One of the tools I highly recommend is called Grammarly. It is an editing tool and it's going to save you so much time. So check that out. Another tool I really like is called Dragon Dictate, and that is a dictation tool that you can use in order to transcribe. And so this is especially good if you like to talk out your book rather than write it. So it's very helpful to people who are not always good at concentrating and sitting down and typing. The second thing I'm going to talk about is author mindset. Now this is super important because you need this in order to finish your book. Writing takes a lot of mental energy, and if you're not in the right mindset, if you're not sure about your goal, then it's really hard to sit down and actually do the work, because a lot of the time you don't have anybody holding your feet to the fire, so it can be incredibly difficult to have the mental discipline to sit down and type and actually do the actual physical work that you need in order to finish the book. So if you don't have that mindset, very hard to actually get it done. So what do I mean by mindset? Is to actually call yourself an author. Super important. Tell your friends, tell your family that you're writing this book and have them hold you accountable. Second thing is join Facebook groups and that have other authors in those groups, and that will help you when you're feeling low or you don't have enough you don't have enough self-discipline in order to finish the book or to do the work to write those pages. This can help you, they can cheer you on, they can hold you accountable, and they can answer any questions that you have. And especially if this is a first-time book, there's a lot of experienced authors out there that can actually help you work out any problems you have through the book. So super important. Now, you have to figure out, the next step is figuring out what type of book you actually want to write. Is it a nonfiction book? Is it fiction? Is it a self-help book? Is it a business book? What are your end goals? Why do you actually want to write this book? Do you want to help people? Do you want to leave your legacy? Or do you just want to have fun along the way? So many, every person is different and they each have the individual why they're doing it. So really centering yourself and making sure that you're connected with that why will help you finish that book. Now, the type of book you decide to write will ultimately depend on how long it is and how many chapters there are. So if you're writing a normal nonfiction business book, it's usually between 50,000 and 60,000 words. If you are writing fiction, it can be a little bit longer. Your normal thriller book is around 80 to 90,000 words, depending. If you're doing fantasy, for example, or science fiction, those tend to be a little bit longer. So you want to know what sort of niche you are writing in and what the different tropes are, what the different standards are. That will really help. So that leads me to the next step, which is really reading everything you can in your genre. If you're writing a self-help book, read all the Tony Robbins books you can and figure out what they are saying. Again, look at their length, look at the type of the style that they're written in. If you are writing a cookbook, obviously that's going to be a lot different than a self-help book. So read all the different types of cookbooks that you can get your hands on. Look at reviews. Reviews are super important because they will actually actually tell you what actual readers liked about the book and what they didn't like about the book. So super important. Gather as much information you can about the genre. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to follow that genre or that, what other people are doing, but at least you know what is out there and what people are expecting. I use a Google Doc for my outline, and I literally just do chapter 1, what that chapter is about. If it's autobiography, it could be chapter 1, early years, and then what happens. I do bullet points about what happens in those early years. What are the salient points that are needed to fulfill that chapter, to make that chapter well-rounded. I would say you want probably between 10 and 30 different chapters depending on the size of the book. And then, you can use the Google Doc to make notes, to add comments, and really figure out what the structure of that outline looks like. Now, next step is setting your goals and figuring out when you're going to write, where you're going to write, and how you're basically going to do the writing process. So I would recommend that you choose a word count. I generally do about 1,000 to 2,000 words a day. Anything over that, if you have other things to do, other tasks, you have a 9-to-5 job, it can be really hard to write longer than that. So having a daily writing goal is super important. And then write down how you've done for that day. And it's okay if you don't hit that goal, but make sure that you can actually track your progress over time. It's super important to figure out when you're going to finish the first draft, what to do next, and so forth. Next is figuring out where you're going to write. I would highly recommend you have a certain place. Writing at coffee shops is good, but you want somewhere quiet, you want somewhere peaceful that you can call your own, and you won't be interrupted, because writing takes a lot of concentration, and so you really need to make sure that you're able to sit down and write. I like to write beginning of the day. That's when I'm most creative. That's when I get the most done. A lot of people I know like to write, at the end of the day. They like to write into the nighttime. Find whatever works for you and just do it. I would highly recommend, doing one or the other. That's just because then your day is interrupted by phone calls, for emails, or what have you. And it can be really hard to get back into the process of writing when you're interrupted by, say a phone call or email or screaming kids or what have you. Block that time out, make that time sacred. Now, this next step is a little bit different from what other people might have told you, but this is create a marketing calendar. Now, why do you do this here? It's because when you write it, you also want to start marketing your book. Unless you're just doing this book for friends or family, you want to sell copies, you want to promote yourself, you want to use this as a promotional tool, highly recommend that you start marketing as soon as possible. So how do you market? You want to set up a website, you want to start tweeting about your book, you want to start sending out social media messages about how the book is coming along, what the book is about. Another great tool is get on podcasts, talk about your book as much as possible. Now, why you do this here is this gives you a longer leeway up to your book, and it builds anticipation to when your book is released, so people will actually buy it as soon as it comes out. If you publish your book and then start marketing it, you're already behind the 8 ball, and you'll find that it's a lot harder to gain that momentum and traction once your book is released. And a lot of best-selling lists, they look at the first couple weeks of your publishing history to decide whether your book goes on these best-selling lists. So the first couple weeks, your book launch, if you will, it's super important when it comes to your book sales. And so you want to make sure that time is utilized correctly, and that you are able to sell as many copies. And the only way to do that is to start marketing your book instantly, right now. Now, the next couple steps are the fun part. I want you to come up with a title for your book. So I wrote a book about copywriting. It was called On Copywriting, How to Make Money Writing. So what goes into a good title. Obviously, you want to entice people to read your book, so making sure that it is interesting, provocative, even sometimes, but also tells the reader what's in store for them. What do they hope to gain from this book? So obviously, from my copywriting book, the book is all about how to make money copywriting. So fairly straightforward, right? But you want to make sure that the reader is able to tell exactly what they're going to get from that book. Next, I want you to hire a graphic designer to design the cover of your book. It doesn't need to be expensive. You can get somebody else Fiverr or Upwork for really cheap and get them to design a nice cover for you. You want somebody who's experienced in cover design, who knows the actual printing process, not just a digital artist, because the dimensions, the print quality is going to matter. Now, even if you don't end up using this book cover, it's important to do it right here at this stage in the writing process, even before you've started to write, because this will inspire you. This makes the book real. You have a book title, you have a book cover. Now all you have to do is write the book. And so when you feel low energy or don't want to actually finish the book, you find another interesting project to work on. You can look at your title and you can look at your graphic design and cover and feel inspired. And this will actually help you finish the book. So the next stage is obviously the actual writing of the book. The first draft is obviously going to be the hardest. And so this is really going to be when you stare down at the blank page and you look at that cursor, and it can be really hard to come up with some words. But hopefully with the previous steps that we've done, this will help you and set you up to have success in the writing stage. Now, I don't want you to edit. I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to write and to get the words on the page. They don't have to be good words. They just have to be words. And why this is important, because momentum in the first draft is super important. Once you get it's like a snowball effect where you have the book going, it's so much easier to complete. So keep writing until you are actually finished the first draft. Once you're done, I want you to celebrate a little bit. Pop open some champagne. You've done the hardest work. Everything else is a lot easier at this point. You have a physical book to work with. You know what's good. You can change things so much easier than doing a book from scratch. So congratulations. Take some time off and enjoy life. Go on vacation or whatever you do to celebrate. Because the next step is the editing. And I want you to do a complete edit yourself and then do a second draft and then polish it as much as possible before handing it off to a professional editor. And the reason you do it this way is because you want to make sure the book is as best as it can be before you get somebody to look at it. And so the editor will definitely look at the structural component of your book, and they will make suggestions about, is it easy to read? Does it flow? Does it make sense? These are important things that an editor will look at that you necessarily will not be able to see because you are too close to the project and you've been knee deep in it for, 6 to a year to even longer sometimes, depending on how long you've worked on this process. So it can be really hard to figure out what is missing. And a professional editor, somebody with fresh eyes who has not seen the book before, can come in and spot these glaring errors right away. Once you have the structure down of the book and it flows well, then comes the copy edit. And this is the editing for grammar, syntax, and spelling that are super important, that will make or break your book, and it will distinguish you from a professional writer to somebody who looks a little bit amateurish. And you don't want to look amateurish. You want to put your best foot forward and make it as presentable as possible. Now that's it. That is how to write a book. The next step is obviously the publishing process, which I will cover in another video. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and then tell me in the comments where you are stuck, if you're stuck in a certain part of the writing process, and what is the most difficult part for you. Until next time, my name is Joel Mark Harris, and check out my other videos.